control systems, because I have found in the report, Chair, that in some instances the department does give reasons where they've actually failed, but in some other reports here, they are not actually giving reasons. In particular, like this one, there's no reason that is being given. I'm nearing to 70. No, finances. The report we are getting is that the department 70%, up to 70%. Well, it's something that we should really credit them to maintain either the 77% in the next financial year or go up towards 100%, because when you report that way, to unearth that you have used or a different tool that will assist you to do even better. Chair, and lastly, Chair, we, on behalf of that were created in that we should, within these 5 years, people. Now, our people, and we want to ask the department once more, and as the budget exists, employed, because this helps to put food on the table, especially for poor people at 19, that act of, in terms of bringing back or making sure that.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. I trust that I'm audible. The department work opportunities provided, maybe for the information of the department, EPWP programs permanently, because our people, of saying we have given you, we can never survive on so in creating these platforms for our young people, particularly those that are out of the jobs, our women, our people living with disabilities. And maybe let me go back to the actual presentation, and ensures that we optimally collect or maintenance of user client departments, the department, and that how do we stick to project maintenance, projecting that we are going to maintain for an annual for a financial year versus the projects that are a day-to-day that just come. Do we have a balance in terms of budget? Honorable Chair, thank you very much.
Honorable Graham, Honorable Shabala. That speaks about that corruption as minister and deputy negated, and those people were still, and another, when questions were asked about that document, specifically as concerns to me to say rely on it. Are we not going to hear something different when we meet at a later stage? And then some, who are those people? Where are they now? Where we say we one way or the other, the department is able, this minister, why can't we use the date to use the ones versus slide 32, whereby we say date can go back to then the department wants to blame that the 209, the lockdown was already, and it was, we were told that this is a continuous, something comes up to department wants to pin it down on the NPOs done, and also to be part of your programs, NPOs that are within the data. Talk about the urban and rural peers and the rural programs to actually the most rural areas that you talk about something else. And the presentation here on the lack of monitoring and evaluation within the auditing, what other majorly not only greens for the sake of achieved. This is a summary. I wish it happened in the past, because right now I'm only follow sure that proper monitoring and evaluation is done so that everything happens that it should happen. At the present moment, PMT is being owed, which is that in one of the meetings you promised that the sister departments actually waiting for a report on that. Maybe it's somewhere actually intervenes in make what is going to be the role. We still haven't integrated. They are not speaking about DPWI. It's almost 1 year into public work, so else we are going to sit with a problem in the next financial that in future when we deal with second quarter, this is what it is targeted. Third quarter, every that report that speaks about first quarter, then third quarter, they must say first, is the progress or are we in that manner? Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, in the new term of office in Parliament, and I think we have a reason to be concerned about that. I have a few concerns, but I will stick. I've said it last. The value will drop, and we will, as the department keeps coming forward, that the problems receive the necessary out of the investments we have made for today. And I think this department cannot sleep.
I'm going to go through a few of the slides and then just make some 3%, but 90% there. Obviously, we're nowhere near completion. I'd like to know what the expected timeframes are for this, please. Then on slides 19 and 20, obviously there's the right people, or is there a lack of capacity because we haven't spent money on 21, doubled our spend on the prestige policy or the prestige portfolio with no policy in place whatsoever. I mean by that, and why would they have invoked them? Slide 28, to ensure that the contractors are deeply concerning that in terms of the date there, last month of the financial year and lockdown restrictions. The leases are at 49, with it, the leases we would create as a result of these leases. Reasons for not having attained the target, a reason for us not having achieved an entire, just references that ever deemed a good performance. So we highest spend. But the bulk of that money is actually just a transfer to the PMTE, the bulk of that budget. The balance is what should have been spent on our policies and our legislation. Genius to be saying, well, we did really, really well. We spent 99.0 and 0. On slide 43, we talk capacity for policy and legislation development on employees. We haven't done. 45 useful program 4 would then be staff and not on. I support what my colleague Contractor for PMTE. Is it going to fall with infrastructure portion, the Defence and Military Veterans Department? There's going to be no infrastructure left. That and user departments are we making sure that where we've got mechanism for them to do their own repairs and maintenance. This department is not supposed a good thing. Ordinarily, when money, what is going to happen to the unspent funds, and how is that?
Can you continue, please?
Yes, thank you. I'm partly covered. I wasn't going to speak to you. I'm not feeling well, but it's okay. And say we this department for the right now, I think we need to look at the stance. I would have suggested other future under disaster, or even on actual in-source construction is always there. But I want to share assistant. Sure, a disaster, but it's health disasters in terms of climate change. Maybe we may need to look around that. The other issue is about the small harbors. There is a figure of 492. Sorry, I did not. Is there anything in? Thank you very much, Chair.
Was of the lady to be with her kids, Honorable Shabalala, the late one. So she's not fine. Honorable Van Stalbeck and Honorable Mjabo had indicated that. Let me also add my appreciating the reports that find this information, but to raise in this of the non-filling of the posts that have been budgeted for. To issue of the user departments or the client departments, so that to pay to PMTE unsustainable. We don't want to see what we have before the 6th Feb to register even at the percentage that you're still sitting at, it's a serious challenge. Lastly, there is a serious challenge here, which has been raised by this, that the departments on their own have departments that are taking this department, which means functions, it's common in the cabinet and other departments. And then what is the use of having that one of Department of Public Works and Infrastructure, the corruption report. Remember, was it last year? I'm not even sure. A report on the cases that we have followed up on corruption. We were given information about corruption at a score of is the true reflection. If it is, I think we need a detailed report on that one. We need a detailed report on that one so that when we shout and clap hands, but we need a detailed report on that one. We don't remember, as the portfolio committee, everything that use a clean, smooth, fine code for what it was supposed to be, DG and the team.
I will start with the department members as it relates to the DG and this. I have written to Honourable Chairperson to ask for a time slot to come and brief the Portfolio Committee on the infrastructure plan. And I think, Honourable Chairperson, you granted us a date around about the 30th of June.
Thank you very much, Minister. DM guided us. We accept them. Accept that has to be done. We're going to do immovable assets and also the land parcels. With the issue of is to make a detailed report to the Portfolio Committee. We remember we made a report last year, and then we can still make a report. So deal with the specific areas of the Avinja leasing portfolio and land laws being the stumbling block in us finalizing leasing quickly as to how does that happen, which is the case projects. Yes, with the budget having to be scaled down, we may put a budget, but the plan advises us. We need to review. Yes, colleagues, can you please?
Thank you. Tend to go through the memory department. At some point, was sitting with significantly detracting documents, and in some area, and we had a service provider that was of rent value per transaction, which was successfully done, and then the value it comes to. But over the past 5 years, the irregular expenditure, huge transactions will provide that is preventing recurring of irregular expenditure. The problem is with these old transactions, and some cases where there are possibilities of it, but the majority of the transactions where we've discussed with the DG to say such cases are referred. The issue was but Treasury, because they need to engage where you need the infrastructure budget to be located to the department. That takes time. But Treasury, when I'm COVID-19, so infrastructure budget of the infrastructure, user don't know how long it will take. But on the recovery also, we address that matter with Treasury to say we request that they must ring-fence the budget for accommodation charges, because you find that when department they are under pressure, they don't focus on intergovernmental claims. Instead, they pay service providers and ignore PMTE claims. What we also did, the minister has intervened. There were letters that were sent, it's more than 5 billion outstanding, slight improvement as a result of work where we request departments to pay in advance for and it was sent to all user department. But at a time when we're expecting responses, a lockdown started. But because now most people are back from other departments for municipal services, our big department, some 2 years, so that they can put system in place. Was the responses of the ministers where they place. There are commitment from some of the departments, especially some commit in that regard. So there is a progress. We realize once we start receiving such money in advance from user department. Then there was a question about underspending National Treasury to deal with the asset register in terms of vesting and all that. So we did not spend that money, but Sasa can come in just to explain why spending. Prestige, there are projects that Prestige run, which they are done in PMTE as infrastructure. I think Batu can comment on that. As the honorable member was raising that, not the project per se, it's mainly savings. That I think I've covered that. The question was to also check interventions that we've put. I think ministers are responding, there is cooperation, but it hasn't necessarily translated into huge recovery, but most departments, they have responded well. But the other question that came from, and we are letting, they are used by user departments. And if you look at the slide that I've presented, departments, they are paying us about more than 7 billion because they use state first get a suitable facility to be used by a user department. And the majority of facilities that are not utilized are mainly residential. That's basically the main reason. Say, what is the intervention of treasurer? I've already covered that. I think in that letter, let infrastructure department have all budget that relate to infrastructure so that each department focus on its own mandate. So that was mainly the question. Let me check. I think for finance, I've covered most of the. Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you, DG.
Let's proceed, Mr. Respond to your area.
We'll also be just touching on the issue of the lease portfolio itself and why have we experienced some bit of delays in as far as concluding those specific leases. Inform the chairperson and the members of the portfolio committee that when we started with the program of lease renewal, we had about 60% of the lease portfolio that was running on a month-to-month basis. And as we speak today, we've got a 12% of that portfolio still running on a month-to-month basis. Agreed to issues of a shorter term period in terms of the lease renewal. That is why we have 49% that which we have achieved in this quarter, in the quarter four. It's because some of them, they are quite reluctant to sign those leases with 3 years and even sometimes less than 3 year period because they would want to remain in the specific building. Public Works doesn't take that decision. And then we procure on behalf of the client department concerned. That is the reason down therefore sometimes that the landlord will dig their feet in terms of they would rather have a month-to-month than. Other than that, it's the issue of the annual escalations that they won't sometimes agree to, because National Treasury, when we engaged them and they gave us approval to renew these leases, which they are in terms of annual escalation or annual escalation. And in those cases, one time when this was approved by National Treasury, it was indicated to public 1 million and not allowed them to escalate and inflate the rental rates that which we would want to have. There was also a question around the small harbours, whether we do have, I can't remember the other province, the new ones, but I think in framework, which is what we had to do is just to renew the leases, the current leases that which we have. Therefore, there are no new leases in the areas or the provinces that which were mentioned. Therefore, it was just a renewal of those existing leases. And there was also a question whether we have any plan. I think it's also answered by the is in that area of small harbours. In terms of the current leases that which we have to renew, it's mainly in the area of SMME. Those are the areas that I needed to cover. Thanks.
Madam Suban, you can cover your area.
Thank you. In terms of the under expenditure for the Reyes branch, I'm going to address that. There was a project where National Treasury allocated us 150 million rand. It's called the State Domestic Facilities Project. This was to survey additional requirement in the MTF, and we received the 150 million to be spent over 3 years. Now, the first tranche of 50 million, we received get the appropriate service providers on board. We didn't make the cutoff point of March 2020, hence the under expenditure. However, this year we're expediting the project. It is currently at supply chain management for approval, and we will expedite the project and move forward on that particular project with speed. I want to address the immovable asset register, and I've indicated at the previous register, which includes vesting, which includes GIS mapping, as well as getting a GRAP compliant asset register. And in that regard, currently our immovable asset register, and that's for DPWI, constitute 81,573 buildings. Register to the SOEC and present your enhancement to this process. For the next 5 years in our strategic plan, we plan to do about 20 projects in the urban areas, but 50 within the rural areas, so we can have more focus in the rural areas. Some of the challenges that we have is that notwithstanding that we've got to align to the IDPs, also with our own user departments, rationalizing, for example, their lease portfolio and giving us the approvals to do development in the also interventions and meetings in this regard, integrated manner. I think for myself. Thank you.
DDG Facilities and Corporate Services, you can cover your area.
Good afternoon, Chairperson and honorable members. Good afternoon, Minister, DM and DG. From my side, DG, I only picked up a question regarding slide 32. We take note of the comments from the honorable member, and to explain that the biggest issue is not as much as what we do, it's in the reporting. I missed anything else, but from my side, that's what I picked up. Thank you.
Corporate Services, and then VATU, and then EPWP.
Thank you, DG. Thank you, Chairperson and honorable members, Minister and Deputy Minister and colleagues. The issue in relation to filling of vacancies is a very tricky one. If we were to look at the financial year just before 2019-2020, we had achieved almost 99% of minutes, so nothing whatsoever. It had to do with the type of events we had experienced in that financial year. Right between April, we had to take a decision that begins to then say, because of the events that were taking place during that time, the transition from the 5th administration to the 6th administration, it will be risky by the new incoming political principal. And for sure, they came on board. And between June and September, we had to provide then an opportunity for the new. We also then had to begin to implement the introduction of this new mandate on infrastructure, and engagement on the NMOC processes had to begin with the. Now, that was the major area of focus, which we WI. It is now with us, and all the processes that needed to be done, both by the Department of Public Service Administration, in respect of issuing a determination to that effect, where the budget that was allocated to the PICC for the full MTF process, and they communicated that to the department to ensure that as it migrates for the beginning of the 1st of April 2020, then there are no effects that may be adverse. Now, this then keep on shifting the target, even right up to the end of the financial year. Now, you will then realize that domino effect, that led right up to the whole financial year towards it. Currently, what we are doing, new revised organizational structure, which then does include and incorporate into DPW, which will have those elements, the property ports, the EPWP, and all the other functional areas. That work has been put together in order to be able to have one single structure for the department. And now, as we speak, in order for us to now accelerate the process of filling of vacancies, we have, as EXCO, put together a recruitment plan that will begin to look into that. What needs then to happen is to reconcile the new positions that will be created in terms of the new structure that we've created by including the infrastructure one vis-a-vis the old recruitment plan. The aim is not to do much between now and the end of September in terms of driving that program, but to begin the process of advertising, at least for filling from the 1st of September going onwards, so that at least we can be achieved. The last intervention that we're looking at will be from the 1st of February 2021, so that at least we're able to eliminate any underspending during this financial year. Thank you. In respect of the other matter, where he had asked that of all, and the national had another system, and this project, to slide 31, those are the links, because the one part of the project was driven by immovable asset register, the other part was driven by ICT. So the two combined were then able to come up with one single database for that system. The best that has been achieved under the circumstances has been the processes to incorporate that. But the next phase of that will now begin to see how best can we incorporate and integrate these various systems across the public works framework.
Good evening, Honorable Chair, Honorable Members. As my colleagues, our contractors have been behind due to cash flow problems in the main, and in this technical support. As an example, there is a provision for potential cash flows properly. And these are the areas that I'm talking about in terms of looking at the best practices that are available. Number two, doing is that our consultants, in terms of agent, and we are working together with legal services to provide some reforms in this area in order to penalize consultants if they don't achieve certain milestones. Number three, under reporting on EPWP, in this area as well, the normal contract management aspects, but they are not very, they need to be re-emphasized when it comes to the reports accordingly. Number four, the other area which we reported is on the Contractor Incubation Program, which we finish line accordingly, and we will certainly do that. We also experienced a number of systematic problems in the SEM, and we had to deal with. The probity audit also delayed the processes to a certain extent, and we are looking into one of the initiatives on my table, which still needs to receive endorsement from the EXCO and accounting officer, is that there is an infrastructure task team, which is a mixture between a regional office, regional managers, and head office. The main purpose of this task team will be to monitor, become institutionalized within our processes. And also what we'll also look at is best practices. We need to look at to deliver quicker, because we have the same on how certain things get done. DG, I will pause there.
DG, good afternoon.
Just can you please allow me just 1 second? DG, can you please respect time?
Actually, we are done. We are done.
Thank you, DG. Good evening, Minister. For Mr. Pile, converted to skills development department, does not receive budget from National Treasury on training of EPWP participants. So we are dependent on the money we receive from the department that can be trained, but where they get skills that can assist them to graduate out of the program. And so this, as a department, we have an enterprise development unit within EPWP, where those participants who want to start their own businesses, they are provided with skills related to how they can start their business and access finances. So those are some of the things that found the duration of participants who are in the program for longer than a particular issue. This also is for people. So within EPWP, we have what we call the Ministerial Determination, which is basically a prescript that guides how EPWP should be done to allow that if participants, let's say, were to observe, most apply to another project, because when there's nothing happening in the labor market and they're still interested in coming into the program, nothing prohibits them from participating. There was an issue also. Okay, the last one, I think it's on the policy. Just to say, we are planning to finalize the EPWP policy within the current financial year. We hope that by that time we will have consulted with stakeholders and ensure that we finalize this process to submit the policy for approval. I hope, DG, I have covered all the questions that were raised.
Thank you, DM. Thank you, DG. Honorable Chairperson and members, I'll just run through a few general points concerning the irregular expenditure in the Department Audit Amendment Act. And all senior management understand that with irregular expenditure now under the amended act, that they will study to put both our immovable asset register and our supply chain management procedures on blockchain, and we will be able infrastructure. In that same meeting, Chairperson, we can give you a report about the implementation of the PV plan on all government buildings, and we have implemented consequence management when it came to the 30-day payment where suppliers were not paid in 30 days. Concerning the vacancies in the department of all the posts, and we did find that there were a number in the department to extend all of those contracts until the 31st of December 2019. And therefore, the process of filling those posts now with all the contract posts out of the way, it shows 100%. It does deal with new and all the other cases. The policy post for the deed just before the lockdown, and now we have June to brief the
Minister and for being frank with us to raise this sharp means other departments can't take your core functions. They must perform the functions that they are responsible for, but not the functions of there has been some change on when we are close. I think, okay. Honorable members, stay safe. Honorable members,
good night.
Good night, Chair.
Lovely.
Thank you. Are you feeling better?